Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. Yes, we're back. On today's show, it's all about Vaisakhi and the celebrations around the diaspora. Here in the UK, the event was celebrated around the various communities, with one of the largest unfortunately cancelled as it unfolded after an explosion. Meanwhile, in the US, in a sign of how high profile the community is becoming, legislative assemblies in at least 2 states publicly acknowledged the celebration. We'll show you what was said. Canada, of course, were particularly vocal in their celebrations, and unsurprisingly, in Amritsar itself, the celebration also took a political note as ex-MP Simranjit Singh led the demands for Sikh sovereignty. And we're also halfway through Sikh Heritage Month in Canada, so we'll take a look at what's happening there. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always from Canada is our very own correspondent there. It's James. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. Welcome back. I hope that you're as refreshed as I am. And for the audience, we hope you're refreshed as well and ready to get on with some great new shows this week.
Indeed, absolutely. And together, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, of course, as usual, at the end of the show, we'll take a look at a few of your comments as well. So thank you for those. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, as you touched on, of course, the world is excited in many different cities about the fact that it's Vaisakhi week. And I call it week just for the fact that there are events going on around the globe, and it is exciting. Now, one of the things that I didn't expect to see was that of ex-MP Simranjit Singh Man making the news. And it turns out that he had led the Vaisakhi gathering at the Damdama Sahib, sorry folks. And he raised a lot of concerns, whether it's sovereignty or about Sikh rights in India and elsewhere. So as you can see, there was a large turnout, and this is actually a stock image from some time back, but it just gives you a various look at that. And that, of course, is of importance because it really shows against the vibrant backdrop of the Vaisakhi festivities and spiritual reflection that there's a wave of political intensity that has slipped through the Takht Sri Daman. I always get that one. The Damdama Sahib this week. And as a former member of Parliament and the Akal Dal, of course, in Amritsar, President Simranjit Singh Man addressed a large gathering at the Miri Piri Conference. The annual Vaisakhi celebration, a historical and religiously significant event for Sikhs, turned into a platform of political expression and community demands for justice, rights, and recognition. Now, the Miri Piri Conference, named after Sikh doctrine of balancing temporal, or Miri, and spiritual, Piri, authority, was attended by thousands of devotees and activists from across Punjab and beyond. Under the leadership of Man, the event emphasized the long-standing injustices faced by the Sikh community, voicing content over the Indian central government's handling of key religious and regional issues. And that's something that Angus and I talk about quite often on the show. It just reminds us how far there needs to be in terms of advancements for human rights and respect of all people living in India, and how there's still so much work that needs to be done, and that the BJP and Narendra Modi have got to stop hiding their head in the sand like ostriches and actually come to the table and find some real solutions that will have lasting effect. Now, of course, we know that khalistan would be an amazing way to ensure that future and to ensure the sovereignty and to show that he respects the community, but we won't hold our breath on that one right away for him to jump on board. But at the same time, we're not just here to commemorate the birth of Khalsa, but to remind the authorities that Sikh issues cannot and will not be ignored, and that was Man's proclamation from the stage set up near the revered Takht. Now, among his most pressing concerns that he raised were the sacrilege cases that are unresolved, the looting of Punjab's river waters, which again we talk about quite often, especially in the fact that Punjab is the breadbasket of India and how essential those waters are. The language and regional identity, which we've talked about quite a bit, Angus, in terms of the fact that the India government is trying to basically eliminate a lot of the cultural and language history that's there in that important cultural part of the Sikh community and the Punjab community. Now, he's also talking about the continued incarceration of Sikh political prisoners, including Bandi Singhs, delayed SGPC elections, and the lack of justice for the 1984 Sikh genocide and fake encounter victims. Again, different stories that we've talked about. And I was really surprised to see that he raised all of these issues at the Vaisakhi Day celebrations. But again, it is such an important issue that it was timely, I think. The conference also invoked recent deaths of Sikh figures abroad, such as Rupudaman Singh Malik in Canada, and also here in Canada, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, accused the Indian government of involvement in covert operations targeting Sikhs globally. And it should be really brought forward about the courage that must have taken for him to speak up in India on such high-profile issues. And we know that the India government has denied all involvement in any of those activities. But again, Mr. Mann is holding their feet to the fire to try and hold them accountable and to find some type of resolution on that side of the world. Now, while mainstream politicians like the sad president, Sukhbir Singh Badal, focused on electoral revival, Mann's message resonated more deeply with ideologically driven audiences. Political analysts note that this may be a resurgence of the regionalist sentiment and grassroots mobilization, especially following widespread dissatisfaction after the farmers' protests. As Vaisakhi's spiritual fever blends with political resolve, it's clear that the voices raised are not just the echoes of the past, but perhaps signals of a political future yet to be defined. And that is a big, powerful statement, I think, Angus, that it was brought up at such an event. But again, I do think that it was very timely and important.
Yes, indeed. And I think that it's interesting, the theme of a lot of these celebrations. It is, technically, it's a religious festival. It is a religious celebration. But, of course, politics is infusing the whole message. The whole theme really revolves around politics. And unsurprisingly, in Amritsar, the centre of Sikhi, of course, they're going to raise a lot of these issues. And, of course, there are so many big issues that the Sikh community have raised, need to raise, and are just ongoing issues with the community. They, of course, relate to what's happened in the past, whether it's 1984 and the events of the 80s and 90s. But, of course, even prevailing today, there are so many issues that are so pertinent, that are so relevant for the Sikh community today, that are unresolved, that are like open wounds. And this is why the Panth are so motivated, and the people in the community are so motivated to be so vocal about it. And it does take courage. It takes this himmat, I think is the word, is the Punjabi word for courage. And I think it takes that to stand up in India, where so many have been imprisoned for just basically doing the same thing, for being vocal about demanding their own rights, their own basic human rights. And this is what the community are doing in Amritsar. And it's quite, it really is a testament to the community's courage. And again, this is why the community is so targeted, particularly in India, is because they have the courage to stand up and be vocal and demand, saying, look, you cannot behave like this. You cannot treat our community like this, not just in the Punjab, but around the world. And as we'll talk about when I cover some of my discussions, of course, it does affect the diaspora all around the world as well. India is even persecuting the community outside Amritsar itself and outside the Punjab. But it is, of course, very important that they are raising even things like that, well, as much as things like the pollution and the right to access to their waters, to clean water. And ironically, this even goes back to, we can even go back to the Anandpur Resolution in the early 1970s, where again, even one of the basic demands of the community, even in the 1970s, well, we need access to our water, to our riparian rights, to our 5 rivers in the Punjab. Why are you denying us basic access to one of our fundamental basic natural resources? And even today, in the 2020s, the community are still having to demand the basic access to the right to their own clean water. Again, it's no wonder. But and likewise, the bandy prisoners, there's another big issue. Again, this relates back to history. How many prisoners, how many Sikhs stood up for their basic human rights and were imprisoned? They haven't just served their sentences and completed their sentences, they still remain in prison. Again, it's just all about, it's no wonder that politics is so infused with this celebration, because Sikhi is so infused with basic human rights. Its philosophy stands up for basic human rights, that when those human rights are imposed upon and trampled upon by the Indian state, there is almost an obligation to speak out about this. And this is why the celebrations both in Amritsar and globally are so infused with the political statements, because they are so inextricably linked, James. And it's very encouraging. And I find it particularly encouraging that even Amritsar now, people, even amongst all this oppression, amongst this intimidation, the threats from the Indian state, that people are finding their voices. They are becoming more vocal. The momentum is gathering behind the community to speak out, increasingly so. And I'm quite encouraged by that, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And let's face it, it's not something that's going away, and it's not something that the Modi government's going to be able to ignore forever. And for it to still be front and center, especially at such significant events such as these, then of course, hopefully the word gets out to a wider audience, and that people outside of the Sikh community start to also put pressure on politicians around the world, that as they look at trade issues, as they look at different things of significance and importance, that they use that to put pressure onto the Modi government and the Indian government to start to make change, to recognize human rights as more than just two words that are in the dictionary, and that they actually have meaning. And I think that we need to make sure that opportunity is there for that pressure to be even turned up on the Indian government. So with that said, Angus, we're talking about different pressures and different things, but let's switch gears for a moment as we continue here on this special month of Sikh Heritage Month in Canada and Sikh events and culture around the world being celebrated. And I thought that it was a great time for us to remind the viewers why it is that we do this show, why it is that Satledge wanted us to do the show, and how we are hoping that it has impact in the broader community, not just in the Sikh community, but in the global community, to really break down some of the barriers and the misunderstandings and such. So I've created a new little promo video that our viewers may see popping up all over the internet to try and promote the show. But I thought that it really does explain why we do the show, why we are so passionate about it, and why we see it as being a success so far. So let's take a look at that video, and then we'll just kind of share some more ideas, Angus, as to why we do the show in terms of myself and yourself, and why we see it as such an important part of moving forward to raise that education and awareness. Perspectives is a current affairs program airing 4 days a week on Satledge TV, co-hosted by James Cousineau from Vancouver, Canada, and Angus Scott from London, UK. The show delivers in-depth analysis and discussion on global issues of significance to the Sikh community, offering both North American and European perspectives. The show is guided by the vision of two Western journalists sharing their learning and lived experiences about the Sikh community. It aims to bridge cultural gaps, foster understanding and empathy, and promote education as a means of reducing hate, discrimination, and racism in all communities. The show's appeal is global, with the Satledge TV YouTube channel surpassing 25,000 subscribers. Perspectives is also streamed on various platforms around the world, and viewer engagement is strong. Comments and feedback from audiences across many countries are featured in the final segment of each episode, highlighting the program's broad and interactive impact. Despite its international success, Perspectives has been banned across most of India due to its honest coverage of human rights violations under the BJP government and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The show continues to speak truth to power, even in the face of censorship. In 2024, Perspectives was presented with a prestigious award in the UK Parliament by the Sikh Federation UK, recognising its contribution to the Sikh media, human rights and global dialogue. You can watch new episodes 4 days a week on Satledge TV, and they're available at www.youtube.com/@Satledge TV. There we go, and I think that sums it up pretty well as to why we do this show and the goals that we have to bring communities together, to help cut down racism in the world and hate towards our beloved Sikh community.
Yeah, I'm very encouraged to see that, James. I think it's an excellent video, and certainly when I do find myself amongst the community and I get chatting to people in the community, the feedback is always very positive. It's very encouraging, and well, for our various motivations that we do it, I do it because primarily I've aligned with the cause in so many different ways. I've made so many good friends in the community, and so the feedback is always very positive. I get this wonderful, warm feeling from the people out there in the community, which really keeps me going against the flow of hard work and effort that goes into it. But it is worth every minute, James.
Absolutely, Angus, and the images there, a lot of them were taken just recently here at various events during BC Sikh Heritage Month. And we actually have a full video of the entire opening celebration that'll be online on the Satledge Network channel right here later today. And we'll also have another one coming tomorrow that covers the full tour that we took of the Sikh Heritage Museum last week. So again, just amazing cultural events that are open to everybody. And just keep in mind that there's so much to experience, so much to learn. And when you learn more about other cultures, about religions, and about people, then it breaks down barriers, not only in your world, but you set a role as a leader in the community to help others to come to a better understanding and to open up to others within the community and welcome them, as they are so vital to the community as a whole, to our province of British Columbia, to the country of Canada, to the UK, Angus, to the US, and as a global movement of just kindness and acceptance and equality. I mean, there's just so many things we can learn from the Sikh religion and people, Angus.
Absolutely, and I would point people to my podcast that will be hopefully uploaded in the next 24 to 48 hours with Bhajan Singh Binder, where indeed we do discuss why Sikhi has become such a force of good for the world. We talked about AI and how AI reckons it should be the global religion for the good of humanity. Well, Bhajan and I have a discussion about that, and in fact some interesting things where various leaders in Tamil Nadu have even said if India was following the philosophy of Sikhi, it would already be a superpower. So there you go. And that was from somebody even in Tamil Nadu. So do keep an eye out for that podcast uploading in the next day or two. Right, James. Let's move on to my first story. And well, basically, I'm just going to cover all events of Vaisakhi. We'll do a quick roundup of what's been going on because, of course, today is Vaisakhi, and happy Vaisakhi to all our audience. 14th of April, of course. And it's interesting, of course, that there are so many memes flying around social media at the moment, just to remind the world outside the community that this misrepresentation that Vaisakhi is not New Year. It is not the Sikh New Year. It is Vaisakhi is a celebration, a completely different type of celebration. And in fact, what I will do is just to give, of course, I have no doubt most of our audience will know the background of what Vaisakhi is actually representing, what it's all about. But what I will do, I'll just do a quick run through for those who might not be aware of the details, what Vaisakhi is all about. Of course, Vaisakhi is a festival to celebrate the birth of what's called the Khalsa. And it is often, sadly, misrepresented as a harvest festival or even the Sikh New Year, which of course it isn't. That was last month, James, as we reported in the middle of March, the 14th of March. Now, It all goes back to April 1699, when the 10th Guru, of course, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, he created the order of the Khalsa. Now, the Guru tested the commitment of thousands of Sikhs by sacrificing themselves to him, and the first 5 to pass his test were then initiated into this new order, and they became known as the Panj Payar, the 5 beloved. And each of the men who stepped forward to be initiated into the Khalsa itself were from different castes. Of course, this reflects the whole philosophy that came from the root of Sikhism, which rejected that whole prevailing caste system of Hinduism. And they, the Panj Payar were individually reborn, as they said, through the Amrit ceremony and given names representing the qualities a Khalsa should have. And those 5 names were Daya, meaning compassion, Dharam, meaning righteousness, Himmat, meaning courage, Mokham, meaning determination, and Saib, meaning sovereignty. There's a very important word. So with this initiation, the Panj Payar, the 5, also adopted 5 distinct physical identity elements based on the 5 Ks, as we know: the kesh, the unshorn hair; the kanga, the wooden comb; the kirpan, the small sword; the kashira, the underwear; and the kara, of course, the iron bangle. Now, the Khalsa is, of course, then has evolved into this collective body of committed, initiated Sikhs. And Khalsa itself means both pure and king's own. And the Khalsa represent the living form of the Guru, and therefore are God's representatives on earth. So of course, they carry with them a huge responsibility, symbolically speaking. And Sikhs are initiated into the Khalsa these days through the Amrit Sanchar ceremony, which is why the Khalsa Sikhs are then referred to as Amrit Dharis. And the Khalsa were created to fight oppression, to uphold freedom, and of course provide basic needs, the food, clothing, health and education for all people. And every Sikh, of course, should aim to join the Khalsa one day. That's what it's all about. So, of course, celebrating Vaisakhi has become a big occasion around the world, and particularly around the diaspora. And here in the UK, we of course do celebrate it widely across most of our cities. And Sikhs have been celebrating Vaisakhi here in the UK for over 40 years in its traditional form of these street processions known as Nagar Kirtans, making them an established part of British culture. And of course, they're very visible and very well known in most of our larger cities. And Nagar curtains are used to showcase aspects of Sikhi to the wider communities. Again, it's all about education and informing the wider communities about what Sikhi stands for. Now, Nagar curtain, what does Nagar curtain mean? Well, Nagar itself translates as town. Kirtan refers to the singing of spiritual hymns. And Nagar curtains are led by the 5 Khalsa, representing the Panj Payar, with the 6th scriptural Guru, the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, on a float as the main focus within the procession. And as well as singing hymns, Nagar curtains may also see displays of the Sikh martial art Gatka on display. And of course, martial arts very important for the whole philosophy of Sikhi. Again, going back to this wonderful military heritage that the community is very proud of, and rightly so. And as well as, of course, in the Nagar curtains, they have free food offerings throughout, representing this concept of langar. Of course, if you go to a Gurdwara, you will always be invited into langar, this where you'll sit on the floor side by side and be fed food, whatever your background. Everybody's welcome to sit and enjoy langar. Now, approximately 20 Nagar curtains take place traditionally around Britain, including around the big cities like Birmingham and London, and they do attract tens of thousands of people every occasion, so they're great occasions. Also, this year, the football, of course, is a big thing here in the UK, and Wembley Stadium is hosting on the 2nd of May. Just a quick shout out for Wembley Stadium. The Football Association, they are themselves celebrating Vaisakhi, and they're inviting people to come and join the Football Association at Wembley Stadium, the home of British football, on the 2nd of May at 5 p.m. And they are doing a celebration essentially to celebrate the contributions of the Sikh community, but of course the wider South Asian community, and they're providing entertainment, special guest appearances, food and more, and they invite people to come together with fellow football fans and the whole community to celebrate what they call unity and diversity. So again, it's all about breaking down the barriers and educating the wider community what it's all about. Now, I'm also delighted, it's just been announced just yesterday, and if you're in the UK, CBeebies, if you know CBeebies, this is one of the BBC, which is our state broadcaster, they have a children's channel called CBBC, CBeebies as it's called. And they are today, if you're, and this is a bit of a last minute shout out for CBeebies, they are themselves covering Vaisakhi with the help of relevant community figures. And so today, and I'm showing it the poster here, it'll be broadcast 3 times today, 7 a.m, which is, now, so quickly, don't switch away from us. This is, if we were live, it's actually on now as we're recording. It's on at 7 a.m, 11:30 a.m, and 3:45 p.m. this afternoon. So get yourself onto CBeebies just to see Vaisakhi. This is a Vaisakhi special. So again, it's wonderful to see how even the state broadcaster is recognising Vaisakhi. Again, it's all about how we managed to lobby the whole British establishment and British media about the Sikh community, and even the BBC on the children's channel are doing a special Vaisakhi celebrations today on that. So if you're in the UK, see if you can catch that. And and then here in the UK, we had last weekend the Southall, again one of our biggest communities just outside London, Southall Nagar Curtain. They were celebrating, unfortunately, and of course I referred in the introduction to that being cancelled. Yes, unfortunately, a gas canister that was being used at a food stall, because of course Langar and the food being given out during the processions. Unfortunately, one of these, there's a bit of a dramatic event, but a gas canister exploded, and that West London celebration for the Khalsa, which is of course one of the largest here in the UK, it was cancelled at the last minute because of that. Fortunately, no serious injuries occurred, and of course these gas canisters are used widely around the celebrations because they of course heat up the food that is given out as part of that langar. Let me quickly play you what happened in Southall, and if you watch on the left of the video, you can see this wall, this sheet of flame. It is very dramatic.
Unfortunately, there's been a major incident in South Road involving gas canisters of some of the schools that are doing safer here. Fortunately, there's no serious injuries, but because gas canisters caught alight, it's going to take some time to cool them down. The authorities are taking the decision to cancel the Nagar Kirtan for the protection of the Sangha.
So yeah, that was dramatic events in Southall, unfortunately, very fortunate, but very fortunately nobody was injured on that. So let's move across quickly to the USA. Now, this is, I found particularly interesting in the USA, is of course celebrated widely around the diaspora across the USA, but politically it has reached a very high profile. I'm very happy to say that in California, in Sacramento, Dr. Jasmeet Bains, again, who's been very vocal and very successful in promoting issues in California for the Sikh community. Dr. Bains and allied Sikh organisations, including the Sikh Coalition, during last week's Vaisakhi events at the California state capital in Sacramento. Let me show you another video. This happened in the California Assembly a few days ago.
Being Sikh right now in America is we are identified from a mile away because of the turban. And that rise of xenophobia that is being seen in our communities impacts Sikhs so much. Sikhs were the first people targeted after 9/11. So thank you so much for the strong support from this floor, and happy Vaisakhi to everyone, which also is the start of the Harvest Festival and also the birthday of our religion. Happy Vaisakhi.
Welcome to all our guests here today. Wishing you a happy Vaisakhi and a prosperous festival of harvest. Welcome to the California Assembly. Thank you for being here.
Now, what I find particularly important and significant about that, of course, it is a religious celebration celebrated amongst the community, but here you have the state assembly actually acknowledging and celebrating it and acknowledging the Sikh community and the contribution. So again, this is all about, we often talk about how lobbying is so important amongst communities, getting out there, being visible, educating people, promoting issues about the community. This is the impact it's having. It means even in the state assembly, it is actually being acknowledged and recognised recognise. That's how significant it's becoming. And even over in Colorado, at the Colorado state capitol, officials and community members celebrated Vaisakhi, and the day's session for the Assembly opened with Ardas as the morning prayer in both the House and the Senate chamber. And this is then followed by Langar and proclamation signing by government police stating that April is Sikh Awareness and Appreciation Month in Colorado. So again, wonderful. This is again the result of successful lobbying and this efforts by the Sikh Coalition and so many organisations in the US and the community as a whole, getting the community visible, getting it known about. And again, it can only be positive for the community. And let me again play you. Well, this is what happened in Colorado, in the State Assembly in Colorado.
Members, today we are here to welcome the Sikh community of Colorado to the Capitol. Next Monday, April 14th, is the Sikh holiday of Vaisakhi, which marks the day to celebrate when Sikhism was born as a collective faith. Currently, there are more than 30 million Sikhs around the world who celebrate Vaisakhi every year, and the Sikh community of Colorado is proud to help bring this wonderful cultural celebration to the people's capital. They hope this event will be a great educational opportunity for the Colorado community to better understand their culture, religion, and people. I also would like to note that Sikhs are victims of far too many hate crimes in the United States and are often targeted because their followers wear turbans and keep beards. And their goal today is to increase awareness and help fellow Colorado residents better understand their culture and contributions to our local community.
Today at noon, the Sikh community arranged for lunch for all the members, staff, and public in the Capitol. This is traditionally known as langar, which is known as a community kitchen open to all, no matter what their faith, gender, age, or status is, and it is offered by every single gurdwara in the world. I remember my time when I visited India. It was always an incredible experience being able to visit. I also want to highlight that Governor Polis will be signing a proclamation later today to recognize April as Sikh Awareness and Appreciation Month at 11:15 a.m. on the first floor. So let's please welcome our Sikh members here today.
Senator Judah.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can't stress enough how good this food is. So I very much encourage everyone to go downstairs, enjoy it. They are incredibly generous. Giving this food is definitely a part of their religion and tradition. And so you can take as many as you want, and they are very happy to be generous with it. So again, thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to lunch. Thank you.
And I do find it particularly interesting as well. It's a real reflection of how each community amongst the diaspora has succeeded in penetrating politics, in penetrating the public eye. And it's interesting, North America, the diaspora across North America, Canada and the US have had such a huge impact at such a high level, again, through really successful lobbying. And of course, the governments in those respective countries, James, as you well know, they really do recognise the contribution of their Sikh community. And here it is laid out very clearly, the fruits of those labours that, again, we're seeing it out in such public domains, in these legislative political assemblies, that they are being so publicly recognised. And yet here in the UK, again, it just reflects, I think, the issue that we have here in the UK, where our politicians, it's almost it's just a tick box nod. I don't see such effusive, enthusiastic celebrations in Parliament, should we say, here in the UK. Again, I think it's really particularly reflective of this ongoing issue we have here in the UK between the Sikh community and our own government, despite huge efforts by so many organisations, whether it's the Sikh Press Association or whoever it is. We've got a lot of big lobby groups here in the UK, and they're pushing so hard to really highlight awareness here in the UK of our Sikh community and the issues affecting them. And yet our own government are really not vocal in the slightest, not in the same way that we see in both Canada and the US. And I find that particularly contrasting. But of course, then, to wrap up, Canada, James, it wouldn't be right without covering, of course, the community in Canada, who unsurprisingly have been, as always, as vocal as ever. And of course, we talked about how politics has infused the celebration of Vaisakhi. Well, it's not surprising that even in Canada, the diaspora are out there in force. Here's Canada being particularly vocal, as always.
Consulate! Who killed Canadian citizen? Indian 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 consulate! Stop terror! Modi! Stop terror! Modi! Stop terror! Modi! Stop terror! Modi! Amrit Shah! Stop terror! Amrit Shah! Stop terror! Amrit Shah! Amrit Shah! Amrit Shah! Amrit Shah! Amrit Shah! Amrit Shah!
So there we go, James. They were chanting, "Who killed a Canadian citizen?" Of course, referring to Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The government of India did. So well done to the Vancouver community as well, turning out with our wonderful khalistan flags as always. Great to see that, James. But fabulous celebrations. The diaspora over.
Absolutely. And I mean, the one in Vancouver is quite large. And it's oddly enough, it's only about 45 minutes from where I'm at. But just 15 minutes away next weekend will be the Surrey celebration. That is the second largest Vaisakhi celebration in the world outside of India. It is number one outside of India. So it's going to be just massive. It's going to be great. We are looking to see if we can actually live stream the parade. So you'll be able to follow it on the channel. But absolutely, we will have a lot of highlights next week from that as well, Angus, because it is just vibrant and exciting. And I go every year. I just love the environment. I love being a part of the community, and just the welcoming and excitement and the energy is just unbelievable.
Fantastic, isn't it? It's great to see. So well done to the community for turning out in such large numbers and making it such a visible, positive event for everybody to get involved in. Right, James, let's move on now. And I'm just going to, just as a quick second story, I got sent over the weekend, talking about Vaisakhi and celebrating. Of course, I was sent a really poignant poem over the weekend by Deepa Singh, and I've covered the story of Deepa Singh and his sister on several occasions. Deepa Singh represents Sikh Youth UK here in the UK, an organisation, charitable organisation, and Deepa and his sister were chased, I would say, by British authorities for a long time. They spent many years, because of course Deepa has been campaigning for a long time over, particularly over Jagtar Singh Johal, amongst many other issues. And of course, as such, he's become a bit of a target of the British establishment for his very active campaigning over Jaggi. Unfortunately for him and his sister, eventually they were both, I would say, caught by the Charity Commission for, I would say very, very questionable charges of things that they'd been up to in amongst the projects that they'd been promoting. As a result, sadly, both Deepa and his sister Rajbinder were sentenced last autumn. And charged and sentenced and found guilty, and Rajbinder particularly was sentenced to detention or to prison for 2 years and I think it was 8 months. Deepa was given a short suspended sentence. But over that weekend, Deepa sent me on his channel, he sent me a poem that somebody had written. I don't know if Deepa wrote this, but somebody certainly wrote this poem. And I want to read this poem. It's very poignant, and it's also very relevant to Vaisakhi. And I'm going to read this poem, and it is dedicated to Rajbinder Kaur, his sister. And it's called For Rajbinder Kaur, Vaisakhi Behind Walls. Imagine your first Vaisakhi, not in warmth but behind cold walls, far from the faces you hold dear, where silence replaces family calls. Months have passed, some days high, some low, but none with the light of Guru's glow. No sacred steps within Gurdwara's gate, no darshan where the soul resonates. You've missed the Sangat's gentle grace, the warmth of smiles, each loving face. No taste of langar, humble, divine, no sweet parshad to make your heart shine. Yet know this, sister, you are not alone. The Panth remembers, your pain is known. No prison can chain the Khalsa spirit. The voice of truth, the world shall hear it. In every ardas your name takes flight. Your courage burns like a sovereign light. And when you return, with Guru's will, you'll walk through his gates, unbroken still. Poignant but powerful words, James. I think that represents everything about Vaisakhi.
Absolutely. I think that really drives home not only the whole message of Vaisakhi, but also the injustice that they have been subjected to.
So our thoughts with Rajbinder, and hope she stays strong through what she's going through. Let's move on, James. In the interest of time, let's move on to our comments column. And of course, a lot of these comments, because we've been away for a week, the comments slightly historic now, but certainly just as relevant as ever. And the first couple of comments go to one of our regulars, 5AAB, and this really brings up, and I wanted to particularly highlight these comments because they are very relevant, again, to even what we've been talking about today. I talked about this contrast between how the British establishment treats its Sikh community as compared to particularly the North American governments, both Canada and the United States. And 5AAB says, we're talking about Jaggi. Look, we're wasting your time. The British government doesn't care what happens to Jaggi. This is referring to Gurpreet, his brother, who's been campaigning so vociferously over his brother's detention. And they shout about human rights. Thousands of criminal illegal aliens are kept in the UK with the laughable excuses. Yet when a British citizen's being tortured by the government of India, who, by the way, are friends with the UK, absolutely, all the British government can do is debate. And Angus was saying that more MPs are now pressuring the government. Pressuring? They can't stop talking about their human rights policies, but when it comes to the matter where it's absolutely necessary to act, all one gets is debates. And I think this is absolutely right. Our politicians do an awful lot of talking, and particularly the government stands up for supposedly human rights. It talks about it, it talks the talk, but it doesn't seem to walk the walk, James. And then 5AB continues on a separate note saying, look, Jaggi Johal versus trade deals, what is more important, money or the life of a person? And you say you're not playing the race card. You're absolutely right. This isn't about race. This is about simple human rights. Do you stand for the principles of democracy, or do you stand for the dollar, the powerful dollar? And as you already know, the UK governments, whether it's Tories or Labour, that's the Conservative Party, or Labour, they bend over backwards to every whim of fascist Hindus. And then, of course, you refer to airport police asking Sikhs, and again, it's relevant to Deepa Singh, who I've just been talking about. Deepa Singh, subjected to police interrogation. He was detained on a flight passing through an airport. He was detained and asked about all sorts of things. What are your views on Jaggi? What are your views on the Indian government? Why would they ask a member of our Sikh community questions like this? In other words, they are being targeted. And again, it's all about, James, it's all about our government, in contrast to Canada and the US. Our government, for some reason, really have it in for the Sikh community. They are bending over backwards to appease India. Why? Is it trade deals? We don't know. Is it something deeper? We don't know. But for some reason, our government just do not stand up strongly enough for our Sikh community, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And let's face it, we've got some real issues with our English language because we talk about doctors practicing, and at the same time, we paired up words like political action. And I think that should be backwards. I think that we want to see action out of physicians, not practicing. And of course, politicians, they are the ones that are practicing because they sure as hell don't actually do. So let's, insist that politicians quit practicing and get to business and start actually making some viable change for the future of our countries, of human rights, and just respecting those around us.
Indeed, and Western democracy really suffers from a really insidious disease, and that disease is one of our politicians who will say anything to get elected, but once elected, they seem to forget very quickly those promises that they made. I only need here in the UK to refer to the 1984 inquiry as one such example. And I know it's no different in Canada, James. What is it with politicians? They'll do anything to get elected and say anything and promise anything, but as soon as they're there, those promises, that's quickly forgotten, aren't they?
Well, it's like they say, Angus, some politicians want their face on your money. The rest of them just want their hands on it. And here in Canada, we've got Mark Carney as a prime minister, and he's already got his signature on the money. So
Yeah, I think that probably says it all. And again, when we talk about Khalistan, and it will be really interesting when Khalistan is established and it is run along the principles of Sikhi, and particularly along the original principles of the Sikh Empire, and that particular unique form of democracy, I can guarantee that Khalistan will actually be run a whole lot more genuinely democratically and more accountable to the Sangat, to the people of Khalistan, than a typical Western democracy of the 21st century. And that will form a very interesting example, James. I think that will be something worth watching.
absolutely. And let's face it, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to get into politics. And they say that you don't get smarter people in politics because they're smart enough to stay away from politics. But yeah, I mean, I think that if Khalistan, or when Khalistan happens, it's going to be a leader in the world for how politics can be run, and in a much better, more efficient way with a lot more integrity, Angus.
Indeed. And TC follows the same theme as well, saying, talking about Jaggi, and TC's prayers are with Gurpreet, that's Jaggi's brother, and his family, of course, the suffering that they've had to endure to try and get Jaggi released from his detention, his arbitrary detention in India. And the UK government needs to stop letting the tail wag the dog. Of course, why is the British government just doing what the Indian government demands of it? The pain and anguish Jaggi's family is enduring is unacceptable. And why are the UK government being held to ransom? That is a very good question, TC. Why on earth is it? We are supposedly one of the most powerful nations on earth. Why is our dog having its tail wagged by India? I mean, certainly we don't see that in Canada, James. The Canadian government is certainly not controlled in any way, shape or form by the demands of India.
No, absolutely not. But then again, we are controlled through other means, so it's tough to say. There's no perfect system, Angus, and I would hate to come across as arrogant to think that we have a perfect system in Canada, because I'll be the first to say, no, we've got a lot of things we need to improve as well. So.
Indeed, but at least I would say, James, is that Canada is one government that had the guts to stand up for human rights to the cost of its diplomatic relations with India. The UK certainly has not had that sort of courage to even to risk its diplomatic relations with India for the same rights and principles, despite potentially Avtar Singh Kandar losing his life to nefarious activities of Indian agents. But anyway, that is another story. Right, James, let's go on to our final set of comments. And Avtar Dylan, cheers, Angus and James. Great news once again. See you later this week. Well, yes, we are back. And it was, we missed our audience, James, did we not? I hope our audience missed us.
We did, yes, indeed.
And Free Spirit, well, James, thanks, James, for the tour of this historic Gurdwara. Your effort is greatly appreciated. It was interesting, yeah, James, that article you did. And Free Spirit asks, are there similar historical Sikh places in the UK, Angus? Yes, there are. And regardless, we appreciate you as well. That's nice to know. Yes, there are indeed. Unfortunately, because my days are so full in producing the programme and, of course, all the editing and the uploading and everything that's involved in getting the show uploaded to YouTube and the various channels around the media, is that my days are absolutely jam-packed full, and unfortunately I just don't have time, and we are a very small team still, and I don't certainly have time to go out to these wonderful places. Maybe, James, one day I'll get out there, but certainly I think your efforts greatly appreciated in Canada.
Absolutely. And I'll just point something out, Angus, is that although we did the tour of the exterior and we did the tour of the museum downstairs, I didn't actually step foot in the main floor where the Gurdwara and everything is there, and the very, sacred place. I am a cigarette smoker, and I like to have an occasional beer. But at that point, it is considered disrespectful at that point for me to walk into that area. And I didn't want to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form. And that's why I didn't bring any footage of the main Gurdwara area on the main floor. So just so you understand, it was a matter of respect and honoring the facility that I was at and the Sikh people. So.
Indeed, and well done on that one, James. But Harjeet Rosha seems to notice, is quite concerned about you, James. It seems that James eats lots and lots of tomatoes and beets. His face is red. Well, I would say a good, healthy, ruddy glow, James. And Harjeet is concerned that you're responsible for the price hike of tomatoes and beets in Canada. And God bless you for that, James.
It must be, or maybe I'm just a little shy and blushing or something. But in all actuality, what's happening is that we're playing with the new studio backdrop here, so I'm just adjusting lights and everything. So I apologize if I come off a little red, but yeah, at least I'm not orange with a funny comb over.
And we, of course, do know who you're referring to with that one, Jets. Good one. And the final word of the show goes to Knockdown, who says, Khalistan Zindabad, love your show and appreciate your efforts. Well, absolutely. Thank you for that. But we absolutely love our audience, and we appreciate the efforts of our audience, because our audience is such a massive part of what we do. We couldn't do this show without our audience. So a big thank you to our audience, and it's great to be back. Thank you for all your comments. And James, we really do appreciate the efforts of those who contribute so much in our comments.
Absolutely, we do. And by all means, if there's a community event in Metro Vancouver, the Fraser Valley, that you would like me to pop out and cover, by all means, leave it in the comment section as well. I'm always happy to pop out to different events and to talk to people and meet people and and just share those experiences. So by all means, don't forget that you can always invite me out to those events to cover.
Please do, absolutely. And on that note, we will bring Perspectives for a close for another day. But please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. Thank you for all the comments that have been coming in. And yes, indeed, you can get in touch. And if there is something you want James to attend, you can message us directly at message@satlogetv.com. And of course, James will be able to read that too. But if there's anything else you'd like to bring to our attention, we do appreciate any of your pointers on stories that we might have missed or we should be covering. So do let us know either in the comments below the videos or indeed directly on message@satlogetv.com. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. As always, you have of course been watching Perspectives. It's a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.